you are having an amazing day so far. All right, so today we will be doing our grade 3 English lesson on adverbs that compare. So we'll be doing our grade 3 English lesson on adverbs that compare. And before we start with our lesson on adverbs that compare, we are going to log into aplusstudents.ca. Once we've logged into aplusstudents.ca with your username as well as your password, and then we are going to select the subject of language arts. Grade 3. And once you've selected the subject of language arts, grade 3, you're going to scroll down up until you get to the chapter of adverbs that compare. All right. So our chapter is adverbs that compare. Our subject is English language arts. Grade 3. And the lesson that we will be focusing on today is to use adverbs to compare. So we are going to use adverbs to compare. And our tutorial lessons, right? The lesson for today is on aplusstudents.ca. So the lesson is on aplusstudents.ca. All right, so now we're going to start with our lesson, right? So we need to use adverbs to compare, right? So it's like you're comparing two things or two or more things, right? So you can use adverbs to compare actions. So adverbs, remember adverbs, it tells us more about the verb or it tells us about another adverb, right? So we can use adverbs to compare actions that is taking place. Actions. So we use adverbs to compare actions that is taking place. And when we make a comparison, right, you can either make a comparison between two people or you can make a comparison between, not even two people, but between two actions, or you can make a comparison between two or more actions that is taking place. So it's more than two actions that is taking place. And a comparative adjective, right? So the comparative adjective, it compares how two actions are done. Only two. So you're comparing two actions. And we call that comparative adjectives. Comparing the two actions that is taking place. And then we have a superlative adverb, right? And the superlative adverbs, they compare how more than two actions are done. More than two actions are done. And when it comes to adverbs, right? So for adverbs that have one syllable, right? We just add an ER to make the comparative adverb, right? So for example, a word fast, right? So if our word is fast and we want to compare two actions, then we can say fast, but the other car is faster. So we can say the, just an example, right? So this car is fast, but the other car is faster. That is comparing two actions that is taking place, right? And we add an ER if the word basically only have one syllable. So like fast only has one syllable. So it's like fast, right? One syllable. So we add an ER to show the comparative adverb. And we add EST to make the superlative adverb. So EST. So if we say this one car is fast, right? But if we compare this car to all the other makes of cars, then we can say, so we can say like maybe the Mercedes is fast. It's just an example, right? We can say the Mercedes is fast, but we can say maybe the Porsche is the fastest car amongst all the other cars. So it's like you're comparing it to more than two actions. So fastest. And that is the superlative adverb, or an example of the superlative adverb, where you're comparing how more than two actions are done. So when it comes to comparative adverbs, right, we compare two actions that is taking place or that is done, right? So two actions. We can put here two actions. And then when it comes to the superlative adverb, and then when it comes to the superlative adverbs, right, it is comparing how more than two actions are done. So we say more than two actions. So more than two actions are done. And this is comparative adverbs and superlative adverbs. All right, so now we're going to aplusstudents.ca. We're going to our tutorial lesson, and then we are going to go over a few, basically again, the definition of comparative and superlative adverbs, some examples, and then we're also going to do the test, and that is on aplusstudents.ca. All right. And on aplusstudents.ca, our chapter is adverbs that compare, and our lesson is to use adverbs to compare. So we're going into use adverbs to compare. So we basically can use adverbs to compare actions. And a comparative adverb, right, it compares how two actions are done. So basically how two actions are done. And a superlative adverb, it compares how more than two actions are done. And we said that for adverbs that have one syllable, for example, fast is one syllable, right? We add er to make the comparative adverb, meaning if we are comparing it to, if we're comparing the two actions, and then we add an er, and that is called the comparative adverb. And we add est to make the superlative adverb. And the superlative adverb is where you basically, it shows how more than two actions are done. All right. So now if we show the comparison between the two, right, which is a comparative adverb as well as a superlative adverb, right? Remember, we first have the base word. It's like I made an example earlier on about fast, right? Fast is our base word. So if we compare it to, for example, two actions. For example, we have soon. So our word is soon. If we compare how two actions are done, right? And then we say sooner, which is the comparative, sooner. And then the superlative adverbs is where we say soonest. So soon, sooner, soonest. And that is when your adverb has one syllable. We add er to show comparative adverbs, and we add est to make the superlative adverb. All right. So now for adverbs, right, that have more than two syllables. So if the adverbs have more than two syllables, we then add more to make the comparative adverbs. And we add most to make the superlative. So for adverbs that have more than one syllable, we add more to make it comparative adverb, and we add most to make it a superlative adverb. So the comparative adverb is where we compare two actions that is being done. And if we add most, right, we make it superlative. And superlative adverb, it basically shows how more than two actions are done. So we basically use more for comparative adverb and most to make it superlative adverbs, but that is only when our adverb has more than one syllable. For example, safely. Not just safe, but safely. So safely has basically two syllables, right? In that word. In that word, there's two syllables. So we're not going to say safely, safelier, safeliest. No. We're going to say safely, more safely, which shows we are comparing two actions, and then most safely to show that we are comparing more than two actions. So most safely. And that shows that we are comparing more than two actions that are taking place. And then for adverbs, right, or for the adverb early, we drop the Y and we add IER to make the comparative adverb where we are comparing two actions. And we add IEST to make the superlative adverb. That is where we are comparing more than two actions that are being done. All right, so now if we look at our examples, early, if we compare two actions, right, then we can say earlier and we dropped our Y and we added our IER. Earlier. And if we compare more than two actions, right, then we can say it's earliest. And we dropped our Y, earliest. All right, so that is basically our comparative adverbs, right? Where we are comparing our adverbs and we have comparative adverbs and we have superlative adverbs, right? And we said comparative adverbs, it compares two actions that is taking place. And superlative adverbs, right? It compares how more than two actions are done. All right, so if we look at the sentence, right, we need to complete the sentence with the correct form of adverb. Tina smiled. Then her friend Nicole did. So if we put the correct word over there in the first sentence, right? If we are comparing two people, it says Tina smiled, then her friend Nicole did. So that means it is comparing two actions, right? Which means that it is going to be comparative. Then we will say more happily. Because more shows the comparative adverb, but it also has two syllables and it shows two actions that are done. So more happily. So more happily, so we use the word more. So more happily, then we use the word more, and this is a comparative adverb where we compared two actions that are done. So more happily. We now understand Earth's formation than we did before. So we now understand Earth's formation. And the word that we can add there is more fully. more fully than we did before. And that is basically comparing two actions. So more fully, and more gives us the indication that we are comparing two actions, so it's comparative. Of all the plants in our garden, the tomato plant grows the, we say it grows slower or slowest. So if we compare the tomato plant to all the other plants in the garden, then we will say it is a superlative adverb because it's comparing more than two actions. So of all the plants in our garden, the tomato plant grows the, and then we can say the slowest. All right. So now we're going on to our test, right? When it comes to using adverbs to compare. And before we go on to our test, we said that you can use adverbs to compare actions. And we have a comparative adverb and we have superlative adverbs. And a comparative adverb, it compares how two actions are done. And a superlative adverb, right? It compares how more than two actions are done. All right. So now we're going on to our test. Johnny ran the of all his classmates. So if you hear the word of all his classmates, right, then it means that Johnny is being compared, right? So he's being compared to all of his classmates. So does it mean that Johnny ran the fastest of all his classmates? Or Johnny ran the faster of all his classmates? We need to choose the correct adverb. So if we compare, then it means that we are going to say the fastest. Because Johnny is being compared to basically all of his classmates, and that shows it is more than two people or two actions. So we can say the fastest. Carly complained then Brad about the last train. So we are now comparing Carly's complaint to Brad's. So we're comparing two actions. So Carly complained, do we say more angrily or most angrily at Brad? So Brad being Brad, we can then say this is basically comparing two actions between Carly and Brad. So we can say more. We put more in front of that word. So since it's a comparative, right, because we're only comparing two people or two actions, then we say Carly complained more angrily than Brad about the late train. So we can say more angrily. So if we're comparing two people, we say more angrily. Stacy spoke the of all the students in the class. So Stacy spoke the of all the students in the class. If you're comparing Stacy to all the other students, then it means that it is a superlative adverb, where it tells us about two or more actions that is being done. So we can then say Stacy spoke the most shyly of all the students in the class. Most shyly. And most, it gives us the indication that it is superlative. Most superlative and more being comparative. Now look, and you'll be able to see the hidden answer. Do we say now look closest and you'll be able to see the hidden answer, or now look closer and you'll be able to see the hidden answer? All right, so we can say closer. The closer. Now look closer and you'll be able to see the hidden gem answer. So we go with closer. And closer meaning that we are basically comparing. It's comparative. And of all the plants in our garden, the tomato plant grows so the tomato is being compared to all the other fruit or stock in the garden. So we can say slowest. Of all the plants in the garden, the tomato plant grows the slowest. So slowest. Katie sang. Do we say Katie sang more beautifully or most beautifully last night than the night before? So Katie sang more beautifully than last night than the night before, or Katie sang most beautifully last night than the night before. So we are then basically going to say she's more beautiful. So more beautifully last night. So more beautifully being correct. And I have known Cole the, do we say the longer of all his friends Or I have known Cole the longest of all my friends. So we will say the longest. All right. Now we're going to our whiteboard. I don't know why. Where is that table? All right, so now we are here back to our whiteboard. If we look at the degrees of comparison in adverbs, right? There we have our base adverb. We are going to write down the comparative, right? The comparative form, as well as the superlative form of each of these adverbs. And we'll start with fast. So fast. If we compare fast, right? And then we will say fast, faster, and fastest. So that is the degrees of comparison, right? It's where you are comparing. And a comparative adverb, right? It's where we are comparing two actions. Early. Remember, we said that if we have a word like early with the Y at the end, we need to drop the Y and we either add IER or IEST. All right. So early, remember we said with early, we drop the Y. So early, then we said earlier, and then earliest. Earliest. And as you can see there, we drop the Y. Hard, right? We need to say the degrees of comparison. It's hard, harder, hardest. Hardest. And then we have generously. Oh, now we have generously. So generously, right? Then we're either going to choose more or we're going to choose most. All right, so generously, then under comparative, we can say more. So we say more. Oh, sorry for the handwriting. So we say more generously. So more. We try to write very small. And if we write that very same word in the superlative form, right? And then we can say most generously. And if you look at 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10, right? Can you think of the comparative form for the words low, far, badly, well, much, and little, as well as the superlative form of those words? And if we look at low first, right? Low, can you think of the comparative form of low? Low, and now we're comparing to actions that is taking place. So we can say low, lower. And then with the superlative, right, we can say lowest. All right, can you think of far? A comparative as well as a superlative. Far. All right, so far. Do we say far or do we say far more far? Which one do you think we need to say far? Or we'll come back to far. Let's go to badly. Badly. So we have badly, right? And badly is two syllables, right? And so far, that is just a few of our words that we can compare. So you can think of far, badly, well, much, and little. But so far, if we compare these words, right, and then we either add an ER to the comparative to add to basically show the action of two, to show two actions or compare two actions, and then we add est to compare more than two actions, and we call that the superlative adverb. And when our word ends in a y, we drop the y and we add ier to the comparative adverb that adds or that shows two actions that is being done, and we add to the superlative adverb we add iest to show to basically show that more than one action, or let's say more than two or more actions that is being done, right? All right. All right. So now at if we look at our activity over here, right? It says we need to circle the adverb that describes the underlined verb. So the first one says birds fly lower than airplanes. And lower was chosen. Because lower It means that they are comparing birds to airplanes, which means that it is a comparative adverb. Lower. Baking a cake takes longer than baking muffins. We are comparing baking a cake to baking muffins, right? Which means that we are saying it is longer with an ER, not EST, but ER, longer. And the child yawned tiredly at his mom. So the child yawned tiredly at his mom. So we're just going to say tiredly for now. All right. So basically, before we go on, right, this is our comparative adverbs, right? And we see that our chapter for today is comparative adverbs. And with comparative adverbs, we either compare two actions or more than two actions. And remember, an adverb, right? It tells us more about the verb. And remember, a verb is basically an action. It's a doing word, right? So we either comparing two actions, which we call it a comparative adverb, or we comparing more than two actions, and we call that the superlative adverbs. And we made an example of fast, faster, fastest. So we add er to our comparative adverb, and we add est to our superlative adverb, right? And if you're comparing adverbs, right, with two or more syllables, then for the comparative adverb, we add more, and to our superlative adverb, we add most. Because now you are we're comparing two or more actions that is taking place. So more for the comparative adverb where we are comparing two people, two actions, sorry. And then with superlative, we are comparing more than two actions that's taking place. All right. So now this is basically the end of our lesson on adverbs that compare. And once again, we said with adverbs that compare, we have the comparative adverb and we have the superlative adverb, right? And the comparative adverb, right, we add er and compare two actions. And the superlative adverb, we add est and it compares more than two actions that are taking place. All right, so grade threes, this is now the end of our lesson on adverbs that compare, and our lesson was to use adverbs to compare. So thank you very much for joining our class, and you should have a good day further. Goodbye.